Hello everyone, welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program video, and this is the first video that I'll be using my voice in. Yes, I do sound pretty young, but that does not matter right now. But here we'll be building a mini starship, and it'll be kind of like a tutorial. It's a little bit fast paced, but you can slow the video down if you want. Right now, we're just doing the main control part, so we're just putting a bit of reaction wheels and a fuel tank, as well as a small little control part, the Probodyne key. I think it's a Probodyne something, but I forget. But so we're just putting some monopropellant tanks with some more reaction wheels, just to help this thing be a bit stable when we're flying. So we're just putting some DLC fuel tanks. They're the Breaking Ground DLC, or the Making History fuel tanks. I don't know, but it's I think it's the Making History. But here we're just on the fairing, and we're gonna make it silver, the iconic Starship look. And now we're just gonna do the little engine plate made out of fairing. We're gonna make it not staged, so it will not deploy when we press spacebar or X or whatever. And we're just going to put it a bit above the actual thing because it's a bit large, and we're just going to move it up so it does not look very ugly. I was planning to do the flaps to have hinges, but it's just too complicated for such a small craft. So I'm trying to make this as stock as possible, so most people can use it. So we're just going to make the wings not have any hinges on them, and we're just going to put them down around 3/4 the way down the engine plate. So we're just going to half the fuel levels on the fuel tank at the top in the nose cone, and we're just going to add our top fins, and we're just going to use some small fins, and then we're just going to move them in and make them the same size. And we're going to use a small delta wing, which looks a bit big, but when you actually fit it in, it looks actually pretty good for a Starship. So yeah, we're just fitting them in now, and as you can see, that is basically the whole Starship finished. But we still need to do the most important part, which is the engines. So I'm just going to place some small struts, and we're going to use thud engines because, well, they're pretty good for a craft this size. If we're going to use the nuclear engines or something like that, the FTL engines, they would be a bit big, but the thud engines are just below the right size. I was planning on going to do the aerospike engines, but I thought they're a bit too big and a bit too wide. So we're just going to use the thud engines as our sea level Raptor engines. They'll be used for that, so I'm just going to move them around a bit. I was planning on doing the aerospikes for the vacuum engines instead of doing them for the sea level engines. But the way the fairing is, they're a bit too small, and trying to put them down more with some structural parts, they were just too big for the fairing as well, and they'd start to clip into the thud engines. So I thought after a while, maybe they're a bit too big. As you can see, it looks pretty ugly. So we're just going to use some Terrier engines, because they do have pretty good thrust to weight ratio for 3 of them for this craft. Well, once you get into a vacuum anyway, or around 60 kilometers, they do pretty good. And the thud engines will basically do this thing. If we had 6 of these, they might as well be used as vacuum engines as well, because the thrust to weight ratio for a craft this size is very good. And well, they have good gimbal, and well, they're clean burning engines, so they basically are the best engine that would represent a sea level Raptor engine for this. So I just using them, and now I'm just getting the fuel lines up for the Terry engines, because they're on they're on a robotic. Sorry, not a robotic part. A structural part. So we're just gonna put them up. So now we're doing the landing legs, the most important part. So we're gonna use some pistons for the landing legs, because normal landing legs, stock landing legs, they don't look that great, and the pistons they look very Starship like. So I'm going to put them around 1.50 or 1.49, doesn't really matter. But yeah, we're just going to around 1.49, and you're going to put them at 0.0, and then you're going to get the gear action group and put the toggle piston all the way up to an extend piston. So when you use your gear key or your gear, whatever you use for your gear, they will deploy, but they won't retract. You can change it to retract, but I didn't here because I'm only going to be using them once. So yeah, that's basically the whole Starship done. Now we're going to do the Super Heavy, the booster part of Starship. This was a little hard to do the decoupler part, because the way that Kerbal Space Program does its decouplers or something, with the interstage nodes, you can't just put them on the bottom of fairings. You have to put them on an interstage node, and if you put them up too much, they just go to the very top of the fairing. But I got it down to a place where the fairing is. Just gonna fine tune it a little bit. So yeah, that's gonna be it. So now we're just gonna get the Super Heavy built. We're gonna be using the DLC parts, the making history parts, I think. So we're just gonna flip that decoupler around since it's the wrong way. So there we can just attach the fuel tanks. We're gonna be using, I think, 4 of the big fuel tanks and 1 little medium big tank, or sorry, DLC tank. So yeah, I'm going to be doing 4 of them there. I'm just going to move the Starship up so we have space. It's 4 of them there and 1 medium-sized one. And then we're just going to get a fairing, and we're just going to put it all the way up until it reaches the decoupler, and we're just going to attach it to the decoupler. And yeah, we're just going to make it silver, because Super Heavy right now is silver. Not really any plans for it to look different. So we're just going to put an engine plate there, and there's a little glitch here. I had to actually get to the staging part to actually click on it. So we're just going to do 8 times 1, which is not what the Super Heavy is going to be, but you can't really fit 29 engines on the Super Heavy of this size. You're going to need a 5 meter fairing or 5 meter engine plate to even fit 29. It would barely fit. So yeah, we're just going to use some Reliant engines, or Reliant, whatever you call them. We're just going to use them. We're just going to clip them in so they don't poke out of the fairing. They're pretty good. One thing is though about the Super Heavy and Starship is that this craft, it will topple over very easily. It's pretty hard to control. Because the Starship, it will keep on going, it will want to go into a roll. So that's why we have loads of reaction wheels, but it will still try to go in a roll, but you can pretty much fix that, because when it's with Super Heavy, it will really want to do that. So yeah, we're going to use a probe core, and we're just going to attach a big battery to it. I didn't actually use it. I didn't reuse it in this video, spoiler alert, because I forgot to do a save file, and I just didn't bother going up. But if you didn't notice, I actually forgot to put some batteries on, so I'm just going to put them on now. If you didn't, you might want to put them on now if you're following me. But there we go, we're launching. I'm just going to speed it up a little bit here. So you might notice here that Super Heavy will really the whole craft will really want to tip over. You can see I'm barely doing my gravity turn, and it's already starting to tip back. It's starting to tip radial out. It's trying to go up. So once you get around 400 meters per second, it's not that bad. But yeah, you can't really do your gravity turn really good because this thing is pretty hard to turn with. So once you're around 20 kilometers, it's pretty easy to control, but it will still want to go into a roll. So there we go. There's the super heavy gone, and now we're just left with Starship. So I'm going to use the Thud engines, or our Raptor sea level engines, just for a bit here, because our, I forget what they're called now, our Raptor engines, our vacuum Raptor engines, our Terrier engines, their thrust to weight ratio here is not that good. So we're just going to use our Thud engines for most of the part. And, you know, we're just going to set a maneuver node here at 70 kilometers at our apoapsis. And we're just going to make our orbit with that. It's not the best orbit, but, you know, we're just going to do it there. We're just going to time warp all the way up to that. And as you can see, we're kind of tilting on the maneuver node. If you look at the nav ball there, we're kind of tilting. But there we go, we're using our sea level engines to push us into our orbit, or we'll circularize our orbit. And there we go, we have the Terrier engines ignited. As you can see, like, even with the Terrier engines, it doesn't really add to our thrust to weight ratio that well. So maybe if you wanted to change, maybe try fit those aero spikes in, but I'm not sure how you will fit them in. But as I said, this is not the greatest orbit. But yeah, that's it. If you like this, then you know, subscribe, and I'll see you next